Welcome back to the Talking Points podcast, everyone. It's me, Tomo, it's Aldas, it's Hayden. Matt is not here, but don't worry, there's four of us, so you're always going to get a Talking Points podcast every single week. Don't you worry. Don't forget to drop a like as well on YouTube. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you're listening audio only, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you choose to consume your audio only podcast, give us 5 stars, give us a nice comment. Tell Aldas how smooth his forehead is, because it is very smooth. I've seen it in real life many a time. Boys, we are here to talk all about Dutch Grand Prix at Zandvoort. And let's, first of all, start with qualifying, because why not? Aldas, that was pretty good. All within, top 3 within a 10th? I thought it was pretty balls to the wall. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I believe the closest fight for pole all season, so it was quite amazing actually. And Red Bull, especially on the back foot, Max Verstappen after FP1, so it was good that he kind of brought it back. But classic Zandvoort, classic Formula One, even a little bit of controversy. Was it Flaregate? Sergio Perez also spinning out at the end, and a bunch of F1 Twitter were analysing Lewis's lap, he would have been on pole position. So yeah, we just love the drama, don't we? But I will admit, I only watched the qualifying actually, only the qualifying highlights, so I didn't see all of it, but
Highlight
exactly. I was racing at the time. I was racing, mate. And so yeah, what can I say? But no, it was I think qualifying delivered actually. And again, it showed that genuinely we did have kind of 3 teams in the running for the win, and it was all going to come down to who would nail the strategy. Yeah,
because I think Hayden, Zandvoort was probably one of the most exciting qualifying sessions of the year, because there's just no room for error. Mm-hmm. And it's as much as it's not great for overtaking, it's got a lot of character, the track.
Yeah, it's one of those tracks where I think people might give it stick just because maybe there's not as much overtaking compared to other circuits. But when you're watching on board of it and the car flowing through the corners and just... There's no time to really breathe and think around that circuit. So to watch an on-board lap, especially in qualifying, is incredible. And you're going to get these guys make mistakes. And even we saw it in the race with the drivers just a little bit offline. They're running the risks of putting it into the barrier. So Zandvoort, the racing might not be as good as maybe some other circuits, but the onboard laps are just incredible around here, and the pigeons are good too.
Yes, we had the pigeons, we had the flares. I mean, we had massive track evolution as well, right? Because of the sand that gets blown over from the beach. So I think from a Saturday point of view, I think Zandvoort's one of the strongest. I think typically it's quite hard to find a track that delivers just as much excitement in qualifying as it does in the race, I guess, because Monaco and Zandvoort, I think really good qualifying, a bit stale in the race. But then I suppose last week we thought Spa was going to be an absolute banger, ended up being a bit of a damp squib. But
I don't know about that. I thought Spa was good. I
had a lot of fun at Spa.
But you were there, Hayden, so you had a different perspective. I mean, it wasn't the Spa. Okay, let's talk about it briefly. It wasn't
Esteban Ocon did 2 double overtakes.
He did. It was built up to be something bigger than it ended up being, I think.
No. What I actually said on the pod, what I said on the pod last week is that if you ignore Max Verstappen, he was going to win it regardless of where he started. If you ignore Max Verstappen,
every British fan everywhere just ignore Max Verstappen.
Exactly. Yeah. If you just ignore what Max did, if that's what was boring, we had so many different teams in the points. We had so many amazing overtakes. And why did everyone change their engines at Spa? Because you can overtake there. They could have just changed their engines here, but they didn't. So yeah, I'm defending Spa.
The Spa defense. Well, let us know in the comments below. Not that we're meant to be talking about Spa today, but did you think Spa was a letdown, or did you think it was good? I mean, it's all engagement at the end of the day. But yeah, obviously Zandvoort on to race day. And first thing I want to ask you boys, actually, because we saw this in the F2 sprint race, pole starts on the outside going into turn 1. In the sprint race, what Marcus Armstrong was able to capitalise, but then Max proved in the race that if you have a good enough start, even though he started on pole, he was still able to hold on to it at the start. Hayden, do you think they should change that up, or do you think they should keep it?
Well, if the pole's on the outside,
for the meme.
If it's on the left-hand side, then that's the racing line. So you're going to have more grip going down into turn 1. So yeah, you might not have the inside line. You're a little bit further ahead, obviously, due to your grid slot compared to the guy alongside you. And you have got the better grip on the racing line. Because like you say, the sand blows over onto the tracks. There's going to be less grip on that inside line for P2. So no, I don't think it necessarily needs to be changing. Plus, you're already throwing it into the racing line. So say you do get a good start, you've got a clear run through turn one. You don't have to worry about the driver behind because you can just take that normal, natural line through that corner. If the guy in P2 manages to get a great start, he's on the inside, but we see it at so many different circuits. So I don't think it's necessarily a problem. I think I'd rather have a grippier side than have the run into the inside of the corner, I think.
Because I feel like Zandvoort is one of the few tracks on the calendar where there are quite a few corners where there are genuinely multiple lines. We saw that last season when Alonso overtook loads of people. I think Cordial did it in F2 as well. Like, I think the first lap at Zandvoort, Aldas, I think is like one of the most exciting. And I was surprised we didn't actually see any shunts this year.
Yeah, that first lap is always chaos because, like you said, there are multiple corners where you can kind of go side by side, do different lines. We did see, I think K-Mag went off, I think it was on the second lap, but even then, again, the track is dusty. He just kind of made a little bit of a mistake and kind of almost like, I think he touched the barrier, but he kind of squared on into the barrier, so kind of got away with it. But yeah, that first lap is always chaos. I mean, even Lewis kind of looking down the inside of Carlos Sainz, they did make contact, which was just unbelievable. But yeah, luckily no early race retirement for Lewis there. But yeah, it's one of those tracks where it just invites a send, I think, because the racing line is actually quite wide on some of the apexes. It's not always about just, nailing the apex. It's about carrying the speed through a corner, and that helps, especially when you're trying to dive down the inside when you see an opportunity. So yeah, it's one of those tracks where, yes, it's difficult to overtake, but it's not as if there aren't opportunities to gain places, and some drivers definitely took advantage of that.
Yeah, I think as time goes on and the field hopefully starts to kind of converge in terms of pace, we should see more exciting Dutch Grand Prix. Because I mean, you can't. Also, just a quick one on the atmosphere. Yes, obviously there's a few knobheads who chuck flares on the track, but I think you can't let that represent the overall kind of mad. I mean, Hayden, your missus is Dutch. She knows more than anyone what the following for Max Verstappen is over there. He's also what is he now?
Officer.
Didn't he get like an officer?
I don't know what that converts to over in obviously like our
Max.
OBEs of sirs or lords or stuff like that. So I don't know what that converts to, but it's a similar sort of honour from the royal family, I believe. Sitting
Yeah, it's like an OBE, yeah.
Max Verstappen.
Because what is the? I know obviously you're in the Netherlands a lot, Hayden. Like, what is the kind of from a media TV? Obviously, Ziggo don't cover it anymore, but is it Viaplay now? Like, it seems to be 99% of everyone there was flying the Dutch flag. Sure, well, the orange anyway.
I think for them we don't necessarily see it over here because we've always had a British driver who is maybe not been on top, but at least been around or up there. I think so. That's why I'm very patriotic. I will always support the British drivers. And of course, I've got my soft spot for Lance Stroll as well. But I will always be looking for a British driver. I'm a big fan of Lance Stroll, but he will never replace Jenson Button for me. Jenson Button was the first guy that got me into the sport properly, and he was British. So, like, that's I think the sort of similar thing for people coming into the sport. I don't think there was a big hype for F1 in the Netherlands before Max got into it. I think obviously people did used to watch, and for those people, they're just in this new awe of this driver who is able to actually compete after watching it for so many years and being able to watch a driver from their home country winning a championship. And obviously they're going to be elated, but it's also brought in a new fan base. Fem got into Formula One in 2016. So around the time that Max moved to Red Bull and the hype really started to build up. The hype was there in 2015, but it really started to pick up when he was winning races and driving for Red Bull. And I think it's a similar story for a lot of people from the Netherlands. It was promoted a lot more and everybody was talking about it. And it's just now become this massive vibe where you have people going to like filling it in Austria, in Belgium. I was at the Belgian Grand Prix and it was just orange everywhere as well. It's just these fans go around Europe and they just love it at the moment. How long this will last, I don't know, because if it follows a similar trajectory with how maybe British fans sort of see, well, they still support their driver, but I wouldn't say British fans are that much, behind Lewis, George, or Lando compared to the Verstappen fan base. How long will it last? I hope it lasts because I think it's a really cool atmosphere that they bring.
Yeah, because I think that there's not, isn't it Aldas that every single Dutch podium in Formula One has either been Max or Jos, I think.
I think so, probably. Yeah, that sounds about right. But it's just, I think there's always been like an appetite for motorsport in that country, but I think I've said this with American drivers actually. Even though we do have an American team in Formula One, nothing captivates a nation than having a driver like from their nationality in Formula One.
And a successful one as well.
Exactly. And, you know, I mean, Hayden just asked the question, how long is this going to last? I think it's going to last literally until Max leaves the sport, because they're selling out. They're not just selling out Zandvoort. They're selling out stadiums, like you said, you know, the Orange Army, in other tracks as well. Like, that's just the popularity of this guy. And ultimately, I think in the UK, you know, we joke about British bias all the time, rightly so. But I think in the UK, like when you go to Silverstone, there are a lot more like fans, you know, Lewis fans, Lando fans, like a huge amount of Red Bull fans, obviously Ferrari fans as well. Whilst, you know, at Zandvoort, it is concentrated around Max, which is it just makes it a different kind of environment. Almost like, I actually would almost say it's more like Monza and Ferrari. Like that's kind of what it reminds me of, because in Silverstone, like, you know, it was a lot more broad. So yeah, how long is this going to last? I mean, until Max, I think, leaves the sport, because he's, you know, he represents that country. He's doing a fantastic job. I mean, clearly, like, he's just driving out of his skin, and he's always delivering right now. So I don't see it changing anytime soon. And to be honest, I mean, I don't see why it should. I mean, they're buzzing, he's buzzing, and that's great for Formula One.
How many wins is this in a row now? Is it
I think
four
it's like
or
4
five?
now. I think it's 4, yeah.
Do you think Seb's 9 in a row record is under threat?
Do you know what the problem is? That Red Bull is very quick, no doubt about it, but there are certain tracks where the Ferrari can be a little bit quicker, or the Mercedes might be a little bit quicker. This was an opportunity for Mercedes, as we're going to talk about. I think Monza, you know, kind of jumping ahead a little bit, I think that would be a much easier win because of like the straight line advantage. I think Mercedes are really going to struggle, but yeah, it's so difficult. People don't realize that's why it was only done one time by Seb, because he was just in the total zone. That car was absolutely made for him. And I think kind of the competition didn't quite live up to where they should have been in 2013. But I don't think he's going to be able to do it, because I think Mercedes are catching in. When you have Lewis Hamilton in a car, eventually I think he is going to get that win. And Ferrari, you know, for all of their blunders, and again, we're going to get into another blunder, they are going to get it right at one point in terms of nicking another win, I think. Hopefully.
What do you reckon, Hayden? Do you reckon there's a chance?
I'd like to hope so, of somebody else winning, just to sort of make it a bit more interesting this season. But I do think there is definitely a chance that Max can... I think he can beat both Vettel's 9 in a row and also the 13 wins in a season. Both of those are possible.
I think that will happen, actually.
The man and machine are just working together in such harmony right now that they are unstoppable. You know, Max Verstappen right now is the best driver in Formula One, and the car of Red Bull. I'm massively surprised, because I was one of the people at the start of the season, or before the season, was like, Red Bull put too much effort into last year, they're going to struggle this year, and they proved me massively wrong. They have been phenomenal this season, not just in terms of making a good car, because we saw a good car at the start of the season, but the way they've been able to develop that and make that into a much better car. And, you know, I think they're still very even with Ferrari in terms of maybe qualifying pace, but in race pace, it looks like they definitely step it up. They can pull away from that Ferrari. And of course, it doesn't help Ferrari that they keep making these blunders and moves them further away from the Red Bull team. I will keep on banging this drum. I want Lewis to win one race this season so he can carry on that streak of the only driver to win a race in every single season. If Lewis does that, Max can happily beat Vettel's record of 9+ wins and 13 wins in a season. As long as Lewis gets that one race win this season, I'm happy.
Save it for the end. Yeah, look, I think, like you say, it's man, machine, but it's also man, machine, strategy team, pit stop team. It's all of these elements have to kind of coalesce and come together. And obviously, we saw yesterday how pit stops can go awry. I mean, I didn't even clock when Carlos Sainz came in to pit. I didn't even clock that there wasn't a tyre and there's someone holding a tyre in that bottom corner. It wasn't until it just was taking ages, and then I saw Sergio clatter the air gun. I mean, boys, it just writes itself.
Yeah,
it just writes itself, Hayden. Like, what more? It's the most consistent. The only thing more consistent than Max Verstappen this year is Ferrari making themselves look ridiculous.
Yeah. and the funny thing is, I was watching a TikTok earlier of like Charles Leclerc's season so far, and it's only up until Monaco that the blunders started to happen. Up until then, I think they were doing a really good job in terms of strategy, and you know, they were on it, and maybe the pressure just sort of got to them of like, okay, we are in a championship battle, because I don't remember these mistakes coming in last year, but obviously when you're in the spotlight, the mistakes you make are obviously going to be shown up a lot more, and they're going to be analysed a lot more. So, yeah, maybe they did make those same mistakes last year, but it just keeps on happening. Like, how do you forget her tyre? Like, where is that guy on the wheel gun? Who is he, like, going for a shit somewhere? Is that what's happening? You know, he was on the toilet, they get the call, and it's like, where is this guy? Like, how do you forget a tyre? You have one job. And how is somebody not there, like, three guys grabbing the tyres and being like, where's Davide, who's got to get the rear left? Where is he? You know? Like, surely somebody else has got to pick up on it as well. I just don't understand it. And the fact that the team are also a bit like, oh yeah, we don't need to change anything. And I get that. I get that from a team manager point of view. You want to keep morale up. But at some point, you do need to look at yourselves and be like, we're throwing this away. And I know they've said, oh, we're not fighting for the championship this year. You've got the car to do so. Like, how are you not?
Yeah.
Like, you are throwing this away. And it's just, it's hard on the drivers as well, because they're just getting more and more and more frustrated. Like Carlos Sainz, this time again, you know, has just dropped down.
He was like, "Oh my god!" over the radio.
Exactly.
Like that was just a tiny bit of frustration that he was showing.
And it just keeps on happening over and over again. And these drivers, you know, it plays on their mind even worse. So then they're going to get down, and then their team morale's down, and it just doesn't work for the whole team. Whereas you have other teams like Mercedes, for example. Yeah, okay, Lewis Hamilton is effing and blinding on the team radio, but Toto can take that, and so can the team, and then they can sort of be like, okay, we'll come back to the debrief. This is why this happened. Okay, everyone's happy. We'll move on to the next one. Whereas Ferrari, it just kind of looks like they come back to the debrief and it just goes, what's going on? Oh, we don't know. And then that's it.
I'm just sick of talking about it, mate. It's just like every single week, and you know, it's funny to a point, and then you're just like, oh, like it's kind of robbed us of it. Like, don't get me wrong, I think, you know, even without all the strategy blunders, I still think Max is leading this championship but not by 100 and it's over 100 points now.
109, I think now.
109
points.
109.
Like, come on, Ferrari, man. You
laugh?
can't tell. Like that car's, again, arguably quicker in quali trim, slower in race trim. You can't be 109 points off with talents like Charles Leclerc, Carlos Sainz, who are both like, I think Carlos is much closer to Charles than Sergio is to Max as well. You know?
Well, Ferrari as well, they're only 30 points clear of Mercedes in the Constructors, which just says a lot, seeing as where Mercedes' car was at the start of the year compared to Ferrari's. It's crazy. Charles and Perez are on exactly the same points on 201. George is
How is that
Sainz.
a thing, by the way? Charles Leclerc on the same points as Perez. Like,
George is, what, 20-something points away from those guys? So that's just crazy to think of. That, you know, they've got a race-winning car, a championship contending car. Maybe not a championship winning, but a championship contending car.
Definitely.
And they are fighting with the team that are in Formula 1.5.
I think it's a very big difference between like fighting for a championship all season long with a car that really is good enough, or say where they are now in terms of like, if you just put Max Verstappen under pressure, if you didn't make those mistakes, yes, the Red Bull undoubtedly has been the I think the best car over the course of the season from every single track. Don't get me wrong, there's been some tracks where the Ferrari's been better, but if you put Red Bull in pressure if you put them under more pressure towards the end of the season, you don't know how they're going to react. Are they going to crack? Maybe they'll make a few little mistakes. It just makes their strategy a little bit more difficult. It makes Max kind of, you know, tighten up just a little bit more. But they're not even putting him under pressure. Like, the one thing I should go back to is Austria. Now, that was a race where Charles Leclerc was like, dominant. He had the car was working. You know, he was going to win that race, whatever. But even then, they kind of made like hard work of it. He had to overtake Max 3 times, and I kind of thought, how is it that even when Ferrari do win a race, they win it the hard way? I mean, in what universe do you have the best car in Austria and still need to overtake Max Verstappen 3 times to get the win? You just know if that was the other way around with Red Bull, they would not be overtaking Charles 3 times. It would be once and then that's it. You know, Max would be gone. So yeah, there's a lot of things to look back, and this is just another page in like the long book of 2022 for Ferrari and all of their kind of mistakes and things that they need to seriously sort out, because yeah, it's now gone beyond a joke, to be honest.
Especially going into Monza next weekend as well, the home of Ferrari. That needs to be a good. Which again, looking ahead, I just feel like it's going to be another comfortable Max win. It's hard to not look at it that way. But anyway, for Zandvoort, obviously going into the race, I was kind of optimistic with the 2 stops, because it is typically difficult to overtake. So 2 stops good. But then you saw Mercedes going for the hard tyre, having started on the mediums, and I kind of this middle part of the race, there wasn't really too much going on. that I remember in terms of like before all the shenanigans started. Yuki Tsunoda, which we will. That was interesting. Seeing the reaction
F1
to that on
fix
social
was
media
trending
today.
again on Twitter after the race.
Oh, it's pretty much a continuous thing, isn't it? And I guess, yeah. Should we just talk about Yuki? Was there anything between then and Yuki that happened really? Because it was a bit dull in the middle, wasn't it?
Mate, Fernando Alonso was on smoke.
Yeah,
what do you mean? He was making moves.
It was interesting in the middle. I don't think like to a new fan they'd be like, "Oh my god, this is amazing," but there was a lot sort of to think about. So I thought it was still.
It was one enjoyable. Of them different strategies were going to coalesce at the end, weren't they?
Yeah, definitely. I think yeah, Alonso coming back through the field. It was a weird one because obviously I think not only was it his pace but his strategy as well managed to jump Esteban Ocon through the strategy because I was looking at thinking like, oh, Alonso still got to pit because he jumped up like 2 positions or 3 positions, and then all of a sudden I was like, wait, no, hang on a minute. He's only a couple of seconds behind the guy he was behind before. So how has this happened? So I don't know if it was like a blunder from Ocon's side or.
Yeah, I know Fernando definitely capitalised on the VSC there, but no, Fernando played his race perfectly and he smashed it. But okay, let's talk about Tsunoda then. So my understanding from what I've heard from Yuki and what AlphaTauri have said and what the F1 stewards have said is that there was an issue with his differential at the back of the car, which obviously regulates how quickly the rear wheels turn relative to one another. Yuki thought it was a tyre issue. So he pulled over. Basically, he undid his seatbelt because he thought he was finished. And then the team were like, oh no, the tyres are fine, carry on. They couldn't see anything on their data. Pulled into the pits. They rebuckle his belt, which took ages. And then they changed his tyres.
He was 2 laps down at that point, by the way. He was 2 laps down.
2 laps down. Send him back out. And then once they've sent him back out, then they see on the data that there's an issue with the car. And then they get him to stop. So...
Or was it Red Bull that made him stop?
What do we think, boys? Couple out ass. Like, looking at it, and do you understand the reaction? And what do you think at the end of the day? Do you think it was choreographed?
Do I think it was choreographed? Yes, it was fixed. Undoubtedly, it was all Helmut Marko. No, honestly, I think forget about the Red Bull conspiracies. I've been saying that on Twitter. Like, it was just. It was just coincidence more than anything that, it helped out Max Verstappen, but I think it was massive negligence by the team more than anything. Like, Yuki misdiagnosing the problem, that can happen. You don't actually know what the problem is, but, I mean, if he felt it straight away, if you're feeling something and you're going to go, if Yuki felt it on that first lap and thought, whoa, I think the tyre, is coming off, then clearly that's terminal. You're not going to race with that again. It's not.
These drivers are so dialed in as well in the zone, aren't they? So Yuki's going to notice that.
Exactly. So even if he kind of misdiagnosed it, he thought that a wheel came off. Obviously, he just, exited the pits. Okay, whatever. That to me, that car is terminal. That's it. It's done. He pulls over to the side, and he thinks that his race is done. The driver, actually, at that point, it was him. It was Yuki that made the decision to think, yeah, that's it. I'm not going to be able to continue racing. And that's when, obviously, he undoes his belts and begins the procedure to kind of, get out of the car and exit the race. And then the team all of a sudden come on the radio and say, actually, no, you can box back in, mate. We'll be able to get you back out. And then there's that long pit stop as well. But even on that in-lap, when he came back into the pits that second time, he wasn't flying around the track. Like, he was taking it super cautious. Now, whether that's because his seatbelt, was undone, or maybe he actually felt the problem again at the time, the car is gone at that point. Why would you send him back out 2 laps down as well? And then, yeah, to me, that's the dangerous part. Like, that seriously needs to be investigated. None of the bollocks about the Red Bull conspiracies, but sending a car back out that you basically knowingly know might need to be stopped, and you're also 2 laps down, like, that is seriously unsafe. Like, that to me is not right on any level. And then, to be fair, the moment he pulled away, you can see he pulls away from his pit box super slowly, so I think it goes at that point. And if anything, they should have just told him to stop in the pit lane. Like, at the end of the pit lane, they saw it straight away. The fact that he even drove as far as he did to me was just ridiculous. So, massive negligence by the team. Also, to tell him to continue on once he's already undone his belts, it's just... Yeah, it's a really big L for AlphaTauri, to be honest.
Yeah.
I can't disagree.
Yeah, true. It was just really confusing, like, when it happened, because no one really knew what was going on. And obviously, the F1 fix sort of thing, like... they're sister teams, but they're 2 different teams. Like, it's obviously it's a bit fishy, and I'm trying to think back. Like, Did that did he bring out a virtual safety car in the end? And did that, because I know that Max pitted under the safety car, and that obviously got him the jump on Lewis in the end.
That was the Bottas, so yeah, it was a virtual.
That was the Bottas one, wasn't it? So like,
he was an ex-Mercedes driver, bitter.
Yeah, did the Yuki one help him out? I can't remember. Like, there was so much going on.
It was only VSC for Yuki.
Yeah,
it was only VSC.
But like, I disagree a little bit with the sending a driver back out. If the team doesn't believe that there's a problem, which they said, they looked at the data, there's nothing comes up on the data, they get him back to the pit lane. Obviously, he's driving slowly around the track, but I think because of the seatbelt situation. Like, if he was to drive around at full pace with no seatbelts on, he's a fucking maniac, okay? And I think he is a bit of a maniac, but he's not that much of a maniac. So, he's not going to drive flat out with no seatbelts on. That's just dangerous. So he's going to come back into the pit slowly, get the seatbelts reattached. And even if they're 2 laps down, there can be a lot of data still collected from just turning it into a sort of test session, you know, running that car and just getting data of understanding how the car works. So I do understand why they would have sent him out, despite being 2 laps down. He could have a little bit of a battle with Latifi, because I'm pretty sure he was 2 laps down as well. So yeah, that's
what you get.
Yeah, I'm not surprised that he would have carried on, because, like I say, it could have turned into a bit more of a test session. And it's just one of those coincidences. Like, he's come out and a virtual safety car has happened. You know, it's the same as Latifi crashing in Abu Dhabi, and that brings out a safety car which helped Max Verstappen. Is Latifi paid by Red Bull? No, he's not. Yes. But yet people still said that he was handed loads of Red Bull for it and stuff like that, didn't they? So it's just one of these coincidences.
Yeah, I think it's so. The way I kind of look at the situation is that, like you say, Aldas, I think AlphaTauri more just like internally, they need to understand how they could have there's a clear issue with the car. There was a clear issue that Yuki could feel, if the driver can feel it, and they're so dialed in, they're so in the zone that even the slightest kind of change they're gonna feel. So AlphaTauri need to understand why that, I guess, wasn't flagged earlier. But also, I do agree. Like, the team obviously thought that, all right, if we just chuck a new set of tyres on, maybe there is a slight, because sometimes just because a tyre can be incorrectly fitted and it doesn't just fly off, it can just be slightly. I mean, we
Alonso in Austria, at the end of the race, that happened to him.
Yeah, exactly, and it didn't just ping off. Like there are different ways a tyre can be incorrectly fitted. So I get that, and obviously, if nothing's coming up on the data, drivers and these teams trust the data so much. Like, you go back to I was watching someone on Sky Sports. It was talking about Ayrton Senna when he was at Tolman, and they were saying, like, what was so good about Ayrton in that kind of the start of his career was that his feedback that was just everything, because they didn't have any way of collecting data on the cars. They had to rely completely on that driver mechanic relationship. Now it's like the teams arguably trust the data maybe too much, like more than the driver, because you clearly had an issue.
It's like we say with weather, like the weather, they have those radars and everything, but sometimes, the old-fashioned way of just sticking your hand out and seeing if it's raining, or just looking at the clouds, like looking at the track, like that, you still need that. And like, even when they should have been watching him on the in-lap, and you could see that the car was terminal. Like, why did he stop in the first place? They told him that, actually, no, you don't have a loose wheel. So that means there was some kind of problem. Like, he didn't just stop for fun. Like, if they have the data to say that the wheel was not loose, then that still means there is a problem. So it's just a weird one.
Also, if this was some kind of conspiracy, like, why would they tell Yuki to carry on? Just tell him to just leave it there. Like he already pulled over. Why tell him to start again and then stop and then start again? I just think, it's one of them that, look, the one thing I think, it's personally, it's a load of nonsense. I don't think there's some, like, I don't think there's like Helmut making calls in the back end to Franz Tost, right? But what I do think this raises is I think a valid question is around the whole fact that there are 2 teams owned by Red Bull, right? Because it then allows this kind of thing to be, which again, I understand from people's point of view why you would, like, you look at it and you think, oh, it's a Red Bull car that's broken down and it's worked out for Max Verstappen. So I can see where people are coming from, but also I think there is a valid question there. I mean, when I was doing the last lap yesterday, Dan was saying that, Red Bull have always kind of said internally that AlphaTauri team is for sale if someone's going to bring enough money to take it. So do you boys think, and there's a lot of talk obviously with Porsche potentially pulling out of the deal to partner with Red Bull, maybe Honda coming back. I like the idea of a Honda Works team buying out AlphaTauri, like, But ultimately, do you two think, like Hayden, do you think it's an issue? Do you think it's a problem that Red Bull own two teams in Formula One? And do you think this is an example of how that can manifest kind of negatively amongst people?
No. So straight up, no. I don't think it's a bad thing that Red Bull own two teams. I think it means, for me, Red Bull is the best junior program out there. And it's the only junior program out there because they can put their young drivers into two seats that they can utilise for a learning process, ready to put them up into the top team. Every other driver academy, Ferrari, Mercedes, Renault, McLaren, you know, all these other driver academies, can you say that they're as good? Ferrari, you know, they put in Schumacher's leaving, and now you think, who else is part of that Ferrari driver academy? No one who's good enough. Mercedes have got Vesti. Yeah, so, and he's not good enough to come into F1. And plus, there's no real seat for him to go. Maybe they can strike that deal with Williams like they did with George Russell, but it's striking deals rather than Red Bull, where it's like, you know, you sign for our driver academy, we've got two seats that we are willing to chop and change and move people around. You know, Gasly's definitely been spoken about potentially going to Alpine next season, so there is potentially a spare seat because I think Yuki will hold that seat. As for another company buying it out, I mean, Honda could be a potential because they do still have that relationship with Red Bull. They're supplying, obviously, the engines. So that wouldn't be a bad thing just to rebrand it as Honda. I think the Porsche thing, I think that's thrown out the window. Porsche and Audi, massive rivals. The fact that Audi can have their own sort of kind of works team, build that Sauber team up and potentially turn it into a top runner is something that Porsche want to do. If Porsche take over AlphaTauri, they'll never be allowed to overtake the Red Bull team. So I feel like buying out, it could happen with Honda, but probably won't. But I don't think there's a problem with Red Bull having two teams. And personally, I'd like other big teams to have another team. If they could open up the grid, open it up to 24, Ferrari had a junior team, Mercedes had a junior team that was run in a similar fashion to the AlphaTauri team, where it's not, you know, an extra team. It's not the same car. It's run by their own, like an individual company, which AlphaTauri is run individually, but it is backed by Red Bull. If it's run something similar like that, where, you know, it's a stepping stone, a platform, I'm totally for it.
That's the thing as well. It's like managing that relationship, and there's always going to be a grey area because it would be like it would to an extent. It's kind of like Man City having like a Man City A and B team both in the Premier League, right? To an extent, but then obviously from Red Bull internally, and again, like we know we've chatted to guys from Red Bull, and they say like that relationship between the two teams, there's not much of a relationship there on a day-to-day basis.
It's not as close as it's made out to be, basically.
Yeah, like you could say the same. We've talked about this with Ferrari and Haas. Are they too close together? Are Haas too in bed with Ferrari? Like, do you think this is any different to that?
I think that, yeah, it's definitely different. I mean, the thing about Haas is that, and Gunther Steiner always makes this point, like, the only time there's ever controversy about Haas using Ferrari parts is when they're doing good. Like, I don't remember, you know, people walking around, you know, last year going, you know, that 2021 Haas that's at the back of the grid, you know, 3 seconds off the pace, like, you got some Ferrari parts on there, that's a bit bad. I think the whole AlphaTauri thing, there's always been alliances in Formula One. There's alliances between, like, you know, a little bit, actually before the Dorilton money, like, there was alliances between Toto Wolff and Williams, obviously, you know, the engine thing, Force India back in the day as well, when, you know, Mercedes gave them the engine. So there's always been little alliances and, you know, political games in terms of, like, you know,
True.
Whoever supplies your engine, perhaps, you know, get a bit of a cut rate on that. Maybe you can take one of their drivers in exchange as well. The AlphaTauri one is just a little bit more kind of, it's just a bit more open. Like, we know that AlphaTauri are the sister team, the B team. And we did see at points last year where, you know, they jumped, because of the title battle, they jumped out the way for Max and they didn't jump out the way for Lewis. You know, that's how the game is played. It's simple as that. So, yeah, it's not, to me, AlphaTauri isn't like a big problem. I don't think Red Bull are ever actually going to buy, Honda, I don't think are ever actually going to buy them. But it's just, because the problem, Honda are too, right, my dog is like kicking off. Can you hear that,
good.
by the way?
It's good. It's good. People love dogs.
Brilliant. My dog's kicking off in the back. Clearly, he's not an AlphaTauri fan, but I don't think the Honda thing is ever going to happen because Honda are too sketchy. Like, they're in and out of Formula One way too much. So you can't trust them to, like, buy a team and then be there for the next 10 years. Like, just as they started winning with Red Bull, they dipped. So you can't trust them with their own team. They're good as an engine manufacturer, but even then you can't trust them too much. So, yeah, I think AlphaTauri are what they are, but at least we know what they are.
Yeah, no, you raise a good point. I mean, you even go back to when I watched the 2010 finale a little while back. Like, obviously, Vitaly Petrov in a Renault protecting Vettel from Fernando Alonso getting past. You know, people were pulling that card out at the time, and I guess with F1, unless the sport gets to a stage where every single team is completely independent, there's no parts, there's no engine crossover, there's no component standardized, like, buy the components from this team. There's always going to be that room for, and like you say, I agree. I think AlphaTauri, it's just a bit more open about what it actually is, which was a shame because as well, AlphaTauri have had a bit of a stink. I don't think they've scored points for quite a while now. They've had a bit of a stinky performance recently, but a team that wasn't stinky, at least in terms of pace, was Mercedes. Much better than last weekend, but let's talk about the pit stops and the strategy call. And ultimately, I guess in a word, Hayden, did Mercedes fuck up?
It's a yes and a no. I think it's a bit more.
I asked for
one word. It's a yes and no.
Yeah, no. That's one word.
Yo.
Yeah, no.
Is that it? That's the analysis.
You said one word. I went with for one word.
Yeah, but then you say one word and then you elaborate.
I'll elaborate on it.
It's a podcast about
I think Mercedes, because they've been obviously used to fighting at the front, they saw themselves in a winning position and thought we could win this race. Realistically, I don't think they had the pace to beat Red Bull. They were quicker when they were on the mediums and Max was on the hards. There's a reason for that, because obviously they're on the softer tyres. Were they able to close up that 12 seconds in the time frame of the rest of the race? I don't think so. But when the pit stops had switched over and changed hands, Max, I honestly thought Max was more screwed there, because we've seen it in Abu Dhabi. We saw it with Charles in Silverstone, that if Max was going to pit, he was going to come out behind both George Russell and Lewis Hamilton, which he did. But then you kind of forget the fact that Max's car is just unbelievable with Max at the wheel as well, that he's easily going to get past those two Mercedes drivers. So him actually boxing isn't a bad thing. But for Lewis Hamilton on the other side, they saw themselves in a winning position. Potentially this is a chance where we can win a race, and let's keep both our drivers out and get that track position. I totally understand that. That's what you do. If you're a leader, you want that track position, because say nobody else pits and you lose loads of positions, it hasn't worked out in your favour. However, Mercedes aren't a race-winning team right now. They're not a team that are fighting for wins. They could have got a 2-3 in this race had they just boxed both of their drivers. And I think that's what they should have been looking for a bit more, is to take home the points. But I completely understand why they went for it. And I'm kind of glad that they did try and go for it. As much as Lewis did kind of get screwed over by the safety car, these things happen in Formula 1. Safety cars can just happen randomly. They can help people. They can hinder others. You've just got to take the rough with the smooth. And, I'm still backing. That race win is going to come at some point this season. But it just wasn't to be yesterday. I understand why they did what they did. In hindsight, they should have boxed. Yeah. But hindsight is a beautiful thing.
Well, that's the unpredictability of sport. But also, we've talked about this before. It's like, how much do Mercedes really have to fight for now? Because they're comfortably at least P3 in the constructors. In my opinion, I think Mercedes would prioritise getting Lewis that one race win and then take a P3 in the constructors versus getting a P2. Like, they're not going to care about that. They'll get a bit more aero and CFD time for next season as well. Like, do you think
it's already locked in?
In a word,
it's
Aldas,
locked in midway through the season. It's locked in through half the season.
True.
So
they're
already good.
Although I suppose for next year, right? Because then next year it will get locked in. But regardless, like, do you think Mercedes made the right or wrong call, Aldas? Do you think they did the right thing?
The problem is, I don't want to kind of like just sound too much of like a hindsight merchant in terms of, of course they made a mistake.
That's you all over, mate.
Exactly. I think, do you know what? I actually liked what Toto Wolff said after the race. I mean, they got second and third in France and Hungary, and who cares? Like, who even remembers that double podium for Mercedes? Toto Wolff said that before the race. They spoke about taking risks. The win is what they're going to remember, and that's what they wanted. They took the risk, and the mistake was actually George boxing, because it was a bit of a halfway house in terms of what they did, because you either pit both of them and then you're out on fresh tires, and maybe you can overtake Max Verstappen, which was never going to happen in my opinion. Or you keep both of them out. And then the problem for Mercedes actually wasn't that Max had this like mega car, mega pace. The problem for them is tyre warm-up. That has been their Achilles heel the entire season.
Yeah, true.
It's actually been a part of the Mercedes, like, just in general, for years now. I mean, that's why they invented the DAS. It's always been a part of their car philosophy. Like, their cars do genuinely, like, struggle on tyre warm-up. And that's why, potentially, if George didn't pit, he could have kind of been a bit of a buffer to Lewis for 1 or 2 laps to just warm his tyres up, because it wasn't that Lewis didn't have enough grip at the beginning. He didn't have, his tyres just were not able to warm up, and that's why Max just got him straight away, because the Red Bull is much better at turning those tyres on. So that's, I think, what the mistake actually was. If you're gonna commit, I don't know what the team was thinking about in terms of, I know why George wanted to come in, but they should have stopped him, because he should have been that buffer, even for a lap or two, just for Lewis to maybe kind of get his tyres into some kind of window to try and hold off Max. So I think the mistake was actually not pitting Lewis, because you have to take the risk. You know, what are they? Again, a second and third, great. Are we ever going to remember that? No. But are you going to remember, Lewis winning at Zandvoort in 2022? Yes. So for me, the mistake was actually pitting George, who then didn't allow Lewis to have at least a buffer for a lap or two to get those tyres up to a working temperature. So, but again, to me, it's all hindsight, because I agree with Toto Wolff. Yes, they made a mistake. Did they maximize the result? Absolutely not. But they want to take the risk because they're going for a win. They're not going for podiums anymore, because that doesn't mean anything to them.
That's what I mean. I think Mercedes are in a place now where, again, I think this was looking at the rest of the tracks on the calendar, I think this was their best shot at a win. I hope Singapore maybe is a bit more kind, but these kind of tight, twisty tracks, they seem to be. And also, I think Zandvoort, it was harder on the tyres than they expected, so I think that tyre warm-up issue wasn't as big a thing. Honestly, at the restart, I think actually Lewis probably bulked a bit too early, because it gave Max that he was able to carry that a little bit extra speed through that final quick right-hander, but also because I think they extended that length for that DRS zone, didn't they? So I think Max would have got past in the end, but I do think that
I don't think there was any DRS though at the beginning, because it was right after the safety car. I think it takes like 3
laps.
I
just mean like generally, like over the course of the weekend, because they have like 2 laps, don't they? But like that DRS zone made that so powerful that Max was able to just like drive. I mean, when he just drove past George earlier in the race as well, like it was the pace discrepancy was high. But I just think that I get it from George's point, because you can only expect a driver to think of themselves, right? And George made the right call for him to come in for the softs. But I do agree. I think the team should have overrode and been like, look, let's just try and keep Max behind and try and get a win for the team, because you can't expect George to think about that. He's only going to think of himself, and he made the right call by himself. But yeah, it's one of them that, like we say, hindsight's a beautiful thing. They went for it. It didn't pay off. It's a shame they hadn't put. I guess if they'd have put softs on when they did initially stop, that could have. Because I do think, Verstappen on softs, Lewis on softs, given the pace that Mercedes had, I think Lewis could have challenged Max to an extent. But in the end, I think that with the whole VSC safety car, I was really excited for the crescendo to kind of come together at the end of the different strategies, because it was one of those races where you kind of don't really see what happens till the very end, and then the VSCs and safety cars kind of turned it up. But also, what do we think of? We've had 2 races now of this new not regulation,
the floor change,
technical directive.
That's the one. Have we? I mean, the only thing I've noticed, Hayden, is that maybe the Ferraris have gotten a bit slower in the race because they have had to change their floor.
Yeah, true. I think potentially maybe Ferrari have got a bit slower in the race, but I feel like that trajectory was happening over the course of the season anyway. The Ferrari were just losing a little bit of race pace. Red Bull just kind of had the upper hand, or maybe it was just they were able to plan their strategies a bit better and know what was going on in the race a bit better. I think here it showed for sure that Mercedes maybe are a little bit closer, but then again, I don't think obviously they're close enough. So I don't think it's done anything. It's hard to tell over 2 races. Last time around at Spa, there was a bump in the track that apparently caused Ferrari and Mercedes to have to raise their ride height, meaning that they were not able to run as low. And of course, with these Venturi tunnels and ground force effects, that they need the cars to run as low as possible. That's what Red Bull can do. That's why they are as quick as they can be. So we'll have to see over the rest of the season. Obviously, we go to Monza. It's a bit more about straight line speed, but there are slow speed corners, which the Ferrari, I believe, is better at, the slow speed corners. But the Red Bull is just dominant on the straight. So we'll have to wait and see around there what happens over the rest of the course of the season. Yeah, it could be an interesting one. But I do think that Red Bull just have the upper hand. I don't think anything's really changed from these technical regulations or whatever they are.
I think Ferrari are struggling a lot with tyre wear, especially, and yeah, I don't think it's got anything to do really with the technical directive about the floor, like raising it a little bit. I think definitely, even back at Hungary, but especially the last two races, actually, Carlos Sainz especially has been talking, and even Charles Leclerc, about tyre wear in terms of, like, their tyres, like, they really do struggle they overheat quite quickly, and that's what happened to Carlos Sainz. Like, he was nowhere in the race. Like, he was, I think, within a tenth of Leclerc in qualifying, so, kind of there, that's kind of what we expect. And then in the race, he was just nowhere. I mean, battling with, Alonso and Lando Norris at the end of the race.
Well, I remember at the start, you had Hamilton on the medium and Sainz on the soft, and Lewis was troubling him. And he
was all over him, mate. He was putting clamps on him. Like, it's just, and I think they're having some kind of, maybe it is due to the floor, I don't know, but now it seems the speed is still there in the car on the Saturday, and I do think that there is a world where they still could have, maybe pushed Max a bit more, but yeah, their tyre wear I think has been a big issue, but we'll have to see what it's like at Monza, because Monza's a big one for tyre wear, actually, in terms of, like, some of those faster corners. So yeah, Ferrari at Monza, with the way things are going in 2022, it's just like, good luck, Tifosi, good luck, have fun with that one.
Just waiting for the inevitable fumble. And of course, then we have to talk about the race winner, Max Verstappen, but we'll do this in the context of the head-to-heads. So starting with Red Bull, Max Verstappen, Sergio Perez, was it P1 and P5 for Sergio? I mean, Max, it was one of them performances where he did everything he needed to do. Again, perfect harmony with strategy team. Maybe things kind of fell into place a little bit, given... I think there was I think Lewis's best chance of winning was no VSC, no safety car at all, and making that one stop work. But yeah, Checo obviously spun in qualifying, and in the race wasn't really able to do too much. It's got to be Max, hasn't it? Because Sergio is corrupt, right? Clearly.
Yeah.
Corrupt. Yeah, I mean, it's an obvious one for Max. It was quite weird with the driver of the day. He got 22% of the vote, which I think means that obviously it was quite a close contested driver of the day this time around. But when you look at it, I think it's actually quite a clear choice that it is Max Verstappen. He just had one of those races where it was just flawless. It was a flawless weekend for him. Yeah. Completely. He did absolutely nothing wrong. But because he's out in front, everyone's like, oh, he's not gained any positions or anything like that.
It's too boring.
Yeah, so he doesn't get driver of the day. But it was just a flawless performance, which we're just seeing over and over again from him. So, yeah, 100%. And it is clear to see now that, whether it's the car's gone his way, I think it's more the fact that he's now more fine-tuned with the 2022 regulations. He's a lot more comfortable compared to what Sergio Perez is, and he's able to be... At the beginning of the season, we weren't seeing Max Verstappen be Max Verstappen because he wasn't comfortable. Now that he's comfortable with the car, he is Max Verstappen once again, and, it's just dominant performance after dominant performance right now.
And bear in mind, that's like Sergio's running a different floor to Max this weekend, right? Because he took an older floor that he was more comfortable with, and still ends up kind of well behind his teammate. So... yeah, it's looking great.
The weird thing is that I'll kind of defend Sergio Perez over the course of the season. Like, he is battling for second now. Like, he's doing exactly what he's not got. He's not an embarrassing amount of points behind Max Verstappen in terms of what you'd expect from a number 2 driver. Let's be brutally honest. It was fun seeing Sergio be on pole. It was really fun seeing him, win in Monaco. But he was never gonna be a title challenger. Do you know what I mean? At the beginning of the season, the way it works is that they're not developing the car around Max. Yeah, exactly. Like. Corrupt Checo. But no, they're not developing the car around Max, but the natural development of the car, the performance where they're finding is just aiding Max a little bit more. That's the difference. They're not saying, oh, Max, what do you want from the car? It's just the natural development of the car is suiting Max a little bit better. But I still think Checo's doing a good job. I mean, obviously it's got to be Max though, because Max is he's on another level, which is exactly what you expect. This is that Schumacher Barrichello, this is that Hamilton Bottas kind of, level. And it's just the team, I think, working in perfect harmony. And again, Checo is at the moment P3 in the championship. Charles Leclerc, they're both on the same points, but Charles has just jumped him on count back in terms of the race wins. But Yeah, the team is doing exactly what they need to do, but it's a bit frustrating seeing Checo kind of, be not as quick as he was, but he definitely still gets his elbows out, no doubt about it. That battle between him and Lewis, that was actually quite cool, actually. That was quite interesting. He almost put Lewis in the gravel, and it was quite funny because he squeezed Lewis out, and then I think, was it Charles or Sainz that did that to him later on in the race, and he comes on the radio and was like, I was pushed off, man, I was pushed off, and it's like, yeah, that's what he did 20 laps ago to Lewis.
Classic racing driver tips.
Classic racing driver.
One thing with Red Bull, I do worry for Red Bull, maybe more from a constructor's point of view, because, at the end of the day, however you cut it, since Daniel Ricciardo left that team, no teammates got anywhere near Max. And part of that is because Max is phenomenal, don't get me wrong. But I think part of that as well is that car's very dialed into a very specific driving style that Max is able to extract. And I worry because, I think Carlos is pretty close to Charles this year. I think Lewis and George are very, very close this year. And I do worry from maybe a constructor's point of view that, Checo's not going to be able to, once the Mercedes does get more competitive, I just worry about how they're going to all hang, how he's going to hang on to the back of that. I'm not too sure, but that's just a theory anyway. Let's talk about...
actually, I'll quickly say, just in terms of that Red Bull thing, though, to add something, it's
what you got.
Even if you get Max and Checo closer like they were at the beginning of the season, that might be to the detriment of the car in terms of that might put Ferrari on like on more of a similar level. If you develop it more in the direction that Max is more comfortable, the car has been more dominant. So yes, Checo's not getting closer, so it might look like there's been more of a disparity, but the car is more ahead of the competition, and maybe that kind of outweighs having two drivers that are closer together, if that kind of makes sense.
And I just want to point out one thing as well. If you have a driver that finishes first with fastest lap and a driver finished sixth, I'm pretty sure that's 34 points. Whereas if you have a 2-3, it's only 33 points. You still actually gain points. So therefore, having a driver who wins every single race and a driver who finishes in the top 6 every single race is still going to gain you points on your rivals.
God,
it's as easy as that. It's as easy as that.
Should have just kept Albon, because that's exactly what he would do.
No, he would have been like P.
All right, let's talk about. Stop it. Let's talk about Ferrari. I mean, as much as it was a messy race for Carlos, did he do too much wrong? I mean, he certainly wasn't. You had obviously, was it him passing Ocon that he thought he might have got a penalty for, but he didn't.
Very sketcy, by the way.
Yeah, that was a bit sketchy. But then I guess, I think there was more scuffiness in Carlos's race than there was Charles. So I'll give it to Charles, because Charles didn't do too much wrong either, and he was able to hold that pace at the start, whereas Carlos was getting swallowed up by Lewis on medium. So what do you think, Aldas?
I did not notice Charles Leclerc once this race. When he turned up in P3, I was like, what? Where is this guy? Where has he come from? Like, why is he P3? But yeah, that's honestly the most anonymous P3 I've seen so far, probably this season. It's got to be Charles, obviously out-qualified. Again, super close to pole, so maybe that could have made things more interesting. But yeah, ultimately it didn't. Not only did Carlos Sainz really struggle in the race, like there was a big gap between him and Leclerc, but obviously he also got unlucky, like the bad stop with Ferrari, and then the unsafe release as well. And that was a weird one, because the unsafe release was actually a bit awkward, because it wasn't necessarily an unsafe release that they released him too quick. It was the pit lane was so tight that it took him a long time to get out of the box. But ultimately, the
McLaren
team
were there.
Yeah, but the team has to take that into account. So it kind of still is on the team.
Yeah.
But okay, they got a bit unlucky with the tight pit lane. But yeah, then the whole yellow flag thing as well. Bottas on the side of the track, I thought that was very sketchy, very kind of on the limit. And yeah, it just wasn't. And ultimately, I mean, where did he finish? Like down in P7 or something? So yeah, it wasn't P8. P dropped down to P8. So yeah, not a great race by Sainz, but an anonymous weekend by Ferrari in general in terms of like the race.
Yeah, I think the same. I have to agree with you. I don't think either driver put a foot wrong. I think Charles was just that tiny bit better, and Sainz just got screwed over a lot more. So I have to give it to Leclerc on this one, but I think, again, you could maybe go either way on this one.
Yeah, that's fair. No, I think, Charles definitely had the edge for me. Mercedes, Lewis and George. I think I'm actually going to say George, because I think making the call to go onto softs was clearly the right call for his side of the garage. Made it. And again, I think he was holding on to the back of Lewis for most of the race. There wasn't a massive disparity between the two of them. They were Lewis was ahead, but they were going along and I was just impressed. I was impressed with the call that George made. As much as I think the team should have overruled it, I was impressed that he had the presence of mind to make that call, the right call in the end, and ultimately get his joint best podium finish after Spa in the Williams, which wasn't really a P2 in the end, but technically was.
It was
so, yeah, I mean, you would say that. So, yeah, I'm actually going to give it great race from both, and I was so gutted Lewis didn't win because I was full team LH for this race. I've got to be honest. But I'm actually going to give it to George because I thought he impressed me today. Also, I want to ask you boys about that move where George was overtaking Lewis, and I thought that was on the edge of being a very late. It was kind of because George didn't really go fully right, but also Lewis did move quite late. And watching that live, I was a bit like, "Oh, that's a bit naughty from Lewis." And then other angles, I'm not too sure. What do you guys think of that move, as well as your headsets, Aldas? Yeah.
I think actually in terms of that move, at first, like from George's angle, it looks like Lewis like properly almost like tries to chop him, but when you actually look from the overhead, it's more that Lewis is just coming just drifting over the track. He doesn't actually like jink right or even move his wheel that much. So I think it was one of those where George was actually, I mean, I think it was actually a bit too dramatic like from George. You could have just pulled out a little bit kind of sooner. But Lewis was drifting over, but it's just, one of those things. Luckily, nothing like more like, nothing worse happened because that obviously could have been a collision. But yeah, it was a little bit maybe a frustration from both of them. I think they both wanted more. In terms of my driver, it's got to be Lewis. In terms of for me, it's got to be Lewis out of those two because he outqualified George. He was a genuine threat for the win, and it was only kind of It's weird how to look at that decision by George because again, I'm buzzing that he's got kind of a career best and this time legitimate. No doubt about it. P2, which that's really great, but I feel like perhaps there was more for the team. But again, it's on the team to say to George, like, you got to take one for the team here. You got to hold off Max as much as you can because we need to let Lewis go. So yeah, I'm gonna go with Lewis for sure. He had the pace over George, and this has been a pattern now. He's had the pace over George, I think, ever since kind of Canada, really. So yeah, I'm gonna go with Lewis. I feel like maybe this is the win that slipped away, but it was always gonna be very difficult.
Yeah, I agree with you on both the move and the drive. I think the move was like Hamilton sort of veers over to like the middle of the track, and I think George sees that, so he's like, "Oh crap, I need to go left because Lewis is going to go right." And then once he realizes Lewis is not going fully right, he's just going to the middle. He's like, "Okay, no, there is space to right and go there." So that was sort of the closest of like the hesitation. And again, I think I've got to go for Lewis because, and I think I agree that George did kind of screw over the strategy a little bit, but I understand why he did it. I'm not going to hate on him for making that decision. They're two drivers in different stages of their careers. George Russell wants to prove himself. He wants to, he wants to make himself look as good as he possibly can, whether that's beating Lewis, finishing second, whatever. Whereas Lewis, he's trying to play that team game and hoping that his teammate would play that as well. But it didn't unfortunately happen. Lewis down in P4, George second, but Lewis out qualified, and they both only got one lap in qualifying. They both got screwed over by the Perez thing, but like I said, they both got screwed over by it. It wasn't like just one or the other. So Lewis's banker lap was good enough, and then in the race, Lewis just had the edge up until after the safety car. So for me, Lewis Hamilton, but good from George. I like what he did. I agree with you by saying that you like that he took the initiative to do that, but sometimes you have to play the team game.
Yeah, look, I think them two have been extremely close all year, and I think it's a good sign for Mercedes long term. Ultimately, they've got two drivers banging in the performances. Right, Alpine, probably fourth best car, another double points finish for Alpine as well. But obviously, again, you just look at the results. Obviously, Ocon out qualified Alonso.
Only just.
Yeah, Alonso. Only just.
It was very close.
It was very close. And then Alonso finishes ahead, and Ocon was about 0.2 off of benefiting from the Sainz penalty. So he ended up P9 in the end. Alonso P6. So got to give it to Fernando. We didn't really see too much of these. He had a little scrap with Lando towards the end, did Fernando. But another great drive from the old man that Alpine didn't want to... Well, it looks like they're only ever going to give him maximum 2 more years at that team and before getting Piastri. And that was the plan anyway, but obviously that didn't pan out, did it, Aldas?
They told me this guy was washed. They told me he doesn't deserve a 2-year deal. They told me he's too old for this. What is he doing, mate? Do you know how many races he's on a consecutive point scoring streak at the moment? Do you know how many races he's on at the moment in terms of scoring points? Have a guess.
9.
7.
9 from Hayden. What was it, Tommy?
7.
10.
Oh, I was
10
close.
races. 10 races scoring points, so he's absolutely on it. He's got the bit between his teeth. This was a really good race, actually. Again, poor qualifying. He said that there was a bit of traffic, but, make your first lap count. So, yeah, Ocon out-qualified him, which is exactly what we kind of see in terms of, like, they're super close in quali. It's actually quite amazing. But in the race, he worked out on the Friday. I think that, he said in his post-race interview that the hard tyre was going to work for them. That was definitely one for their car. They pitted him early to get him into fresh air, and ultimately he benefited also at the end from the virtual, I think, with Yuki Tsunoda. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, an amazing drive by Fernando. P5 from P13, I think he started or something. So, yeah, really good result. But to be honest, again, good result by the entire team, because I feel like Mercedes and Alpine are almost, or at least the fan bases from what I'm seeing from Twitter, which is, I'm sure, a great judgment of the fan bases. It's like when one driver succeeds, it's like, oh my God, I gotta hate the other driver. It's unbelievable. Yeah. Like, both of the drivers did a great job. Ocon in the points, Alonso in the points. And ultimately, McLaren, I think the more I look at it, I think they do have a car that could challenge Alpine across the entire season, but they have one driver getting the points, and Alpine have 2. That's the very big difference. But yeah, that's kind of, another really great race by Alonso, arguably the best of the year at the moment.
Yeah, agree. Alonso for me. Qualifying very close. Ocon out qualifying Alonso, so that's obviously good for him. They've always been so close to the qualifying battles, but Alonso is just so consistent, and he's just such a good driver. So we got another dog.
Fine. Someone else's dog now.
Wild in the background. Minton wants to be on the show. Involved. There he is. He's a big Ocon fan. He's like, how dare you pick Fernando Alonso?
If you're audio only, you're missing out here. Some sausage dog content. Carry on, Hayden.
Go check us out on YouTube to see the sausage dog content. But yeah, Alonso, I think, and I say it all this time, people that I think can challenge for a championship are Lewis Hamilton, Max Verstappen, Fernando Alonso, because they are just consistent. Maybe even George Russell into that frame as well, because his consistency is unreal. Now, before this weekend, he'd only ever finished between 3rd and 5th in races he'd finished. Now it's 2nd and 5th, so he's increased that the right way. So that consistency is immense, and that's what you need to be a world champion. Fernando's still got it. Put him in a race-winning team, and he can fight for that championship 100%. And boy, for me, for 2 reasons, I hope this Aston Martin project works out, so I can see Lance Stroll fighting at the front, but also because we are in for a treat with Fernando Alonso back up front.
I can't believe me and Hayden are going to be teammates next year. This is unbelievable.
Join the Green Army, Aldas. Join the Green Army.
I didn't clock that. No, I would love to see. I did a video like a couple of weeks ago about like dream driver pairings, and for me, it's like Verstappen, Alonso in that Red Bull as it is. I would love to see that, even if it was just for a race. I would just love to know how close this current Fernando would be able to get. Because again, I think he's the most experienced driver in F1 history now, and I think we're seeing that on track. We're seeing that. Yes, in quali, I think Ocon can get close, but in the races, Alonso just always seems to have the edge, because he's Fernando Alonso and he's got all this experience and he's still driving at a top tier level.
But I don't think it's experience. I think it's, do you know what it is? I think it's motivation and hunger, because you can tell Kimi last year, it was just race by race. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was just, Kimi was kind of like, he was enjoying it, stuff like that. I think Fernando genuinely believes, like, he believes, like, with all of his dramatic and kind of arrogant, self, that he can be a world champion still. He can, challenge Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton, whoever it is. And I think that's the difference. It's not just experience. He is still motivated and still got the speed. And I just can't believe Alpine have actually let him go. It's just, I can't believe it. It's brilliant.
The fumble is real. All to McLaren, a team that, again, they're a good 25, 24 points, I think, behind Alpine now in the Constructors. And like you said, Aldas, only one driver is delivering the points. And unfortunately, it was another very, very bad weekend for Daniel Ricciardo. So, of course, it's Lando Norris who takes the head-to-head. Not much to say on Lando. I think he just had a really kind of solid race. Qualified 7th. I think he's 7th in the Drivers' Championship now. Finished 7th. Lucky number 7, I suppose. Mm-hmm. And Daniel Ricciardo qualified 17th and finished 17th. So
there's a very good reason why Matt is not on this podcast. I'll just leave it there, he
made up a terrible excuse.
With tears, that's why.
It's genuinely it's genuinely sad to see, and I really hope Monza delivers something better for Daniel Ricciardo. But
Race win again?
This was
not with their straight line speed, mate.
Not with this McLaren car. But this was a result to forget. I think probably one of. He said he was all right on the hard tyre, but you got to think that discrepancy to Lando, it's got to be one of the worst he's had so far, I'd say.
Yeah, for sure. And also, by the way, Lando's on, I think I'm looking at it now, like the last 5 races, he scored points 4 times, and every single time he's in 7th. So, yeah, lucky number 7 for Lando. But, yeah, just a really good race by Lando. Again, I think there's certain races where that McLaren is quicker than the Alpine, and if they had an Esteban Ocon or a Fernando Alonso in that McLaren alongside, Lando Norris, I think there could be a tighter fight for that P4 in the constructors. So yeah, it's got to be Lando, and ultimately, yeah, and also the whole Oscar Piastri thing. Yeah, they needed to cut ties with Daniel. It just wasn't working. It's not going to work next year, and I'm very excited to see what that driver lineup is going to be. With Lando and Oscar. So that's going to be drama for sure.
Yeah, easy one on this side for Lando Norris. With Daniel, these are very, very important times for Daniel Ricciardo, Pierre Gasly and Mick Schumacher. 3 drivers that have all been linked with that Alpine seat, and they need to all perform. Gasly, I think, did a decent job last time out in Belgium. Pit lane to P9. P11 this time around. I don't think that AlphaTauri really had the pace, but he was kind of shown up by Yuki Tsunoda, I think, this weekend. Daniel, massively shown up by his teammate. He needs good results, and he needs them quickly, because you can, like, we talk about Mick Schumacher quite a lot on this podcast, about a bit negatively, but if he were to perform in these next 5 races, he is putting himself in a very good position for that Alpine seat, because you're only as good as your last races. People forget. People have very short memories in Formula 1. You start to perform and everyone's going to be on that hype train of Mick Schumacher. So these are important weeks. And Daniel Ricciardo needs to find something. I don't know what it is. It just seems to be maybe qualifying is not right for him, and then they just get stuck in that train. But he needs to work on that qualifying to put himself closer to Lando, because right now he's out of F1 next season.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's the main issue, qualifying, because, qualifying, to be a good qualifier shows that you can really push that car to 100%. And that's when you're pushing the car to its very, very extremes and very, very limits. In the race, you can drive more conservatively, you can manage tyres. There's a lot more. I don't think Daniel was a mile off Lando in race, but you're right. I think when he's qualifying so far down the order, it's not giving him a chance, because we've seen a few races this year where in the race he's not been a mile off, like Australia and Baku, were races where he was pretty close to Lando. But yeah, it's that qualifying, and that's the ultimate lack of confidence in the car. So
I think his confidence is just shot. That's what it is. Like, in qualifying, when you're confident in the car, it's about balancing it on that limit so that you can get the most out of it, and kind of feeling comfortable when the car's quite edgy, but on that limit where it's at its fastest. But in the race, we don't see, Daniel Ricciardo having these, even if he qualifies bad, he doesn't then have the confidence in the race to overtake the cars ahead of him. Because he said, after the race, that he thought he had more pace than the guys around him, but he was just stuck in the train. So, his confidence is now just shot.
Yeah. Weirdly, they did the most pit stops of everyone as well. They did a 5-stopper, pitted him on lap 55, and then again on lap 57, I think. So, no, lap 56. They pitted him again 1 lap later. Don't know what they were doing with the strategy. So maybe that was something as well that needs to be played into factor.
Yeah, there have
really
been some
it as closely. I'm sure if Matt was here, he could tell us exactly what happened.
Oh, I'm
to
sure.
Daniel Ricciardo. But
it was raining on just him around the track.
The cartoon, the cloud follows him.
There have been some sus calls from McLaren regarding Ricciardo, but also again, unfortunately, it's got to the position where McLaren, if it means getting Lando at potentially another position, they're going to prioritise him and put Daniel on a strategy that's going to potentially work for his teammate, because Daniel isn't anywhere near, unfortunately. But hopefully, again, Monza, it's a place he knows how to win, and the car might not be there, but hopefully relative to Lando, he's more confident next weekend. Let's talk, you know what, we'll talk about Aston Martin now, Hayden, because you know what? This is definitely Stroll. The head-to-head. And I've been, these last few races, I've actually been pretty impressed by Lance. I think he's taken a bit of we've had these, start of 2020, he was strong, then fell off, and hopefully he doesn't fall off again this year. Towards the end.
Was he strong at the start? 2020, sorry.
2020, yeah, he was.
Sorry,
yeah. And, I've actually been, impressed by Lance. Did a great job in qualifying and in the race. Pretty solid. P10 in the end. Almost, he was pretty close as well to jumping Sainz. Almost got a P9. Goes 1 point ahead of Alex Albon, which I'm not so happy about. We'll start. Go on, Hayden. We'll start with you before we get to Aldas. Go on.
Great qualifying.
Get your moment in.
Aston actually had a decent car this race. I think obviously the mistake from Vettel cost him from getting into Q3. I think both cars could have got into Q3. I think both cars were looking really strong. So it's a shame there from Vettel's side that he made that mistake. But my boy keeping it clean, showing up on a Saturday for the past 2 weekends. What is going on? I'm loving it. I can actually enjoy qualifying once again. I could be like, oh yeah, do you know what? There is a reason now why I watch qualifying. My boy is actually showing up. We'll see whether that continues next time at Monza. As Tomo's camera's just disappeared.
It's fine. Okay, carry on.
Okay. But yeah, in the race, I was also really impressed. I think the safety car kind of screwed him over because it allowed both the Alpines to jump him because they could pit under the virtual safety car. So he could have been up in that because he was running in P7. Lando was P6, he was P7. Sainz was back there a little bit because of the issues with the pit stop. And I was so annoyed because I was loving the battle between Perez and Sainz whilst it was going on, because I was watching those timings like, he's just within that cusp, keep this coming. And then Perez gets pushed off the track and Sainz just drives away, and I'm just like, no, come back. But I'm happy with the point. I honestly, do you know what, when that safety car came out, I was like, somehow, somewhere, Gasly's going to get him, and once again, it's a great race from Stroll, but he's going to finish P11, so no one cares. But no, luckily this time, he's finally in the point. I'm repping the Stroll's chair. I can't turn around this chair, so you can't see the Stroll on the back, but I was loving it yesterday.
Yeah, it's got to go to your boy. It was a good race by him. Not a great race by Seb, but he had a good race last time out in Spa, but the holding up, though, of Lewis Hamilton, that was nuts to me. Like, surely your engineer would tell you, pit exit, you're not racing, with Lewis and Checo behind, and the way it was just everywhere Seb went was like the wrong way. So yeah, I don't know what happened there. But in terms of Stroll, yeah, I mean, seeing him in Q3, I mean, I had to like clean my eyes. I was like, what? He actually turns up on a Saturday, unbelievable. But yeah, really good race by him. He did get done by the virtual safety car. I think there might have been more points on the board. And it does seem like the Aston Martin on some tracks, maybe similar to the McLaren in a way, like where if it's the right track for the Aston Martin, they can kind of get something out of it. Yeah. And then if it doesn't suit them, that car is not very it's not very adaptable on all of the tracks. But yeah, it's good to see kind of Stroll turn up for his 3 good performances in a season. So yeah, good race.
Well, to be fair, I'm just looking at it now, right? So Stroll's got P10 5 times this year. So all his 5 points have been 1 points.
Yeah, it's
every
always
other race
P10.
is P11.
And then three P11s, 2 P12s, and 2 P13s, P14, 15. So yeah, he's kind of been on the cusp a lot. And I guess, yeah, it's... I think, Seb's definitely had the stronger season over the course of it. But in these last few races, I think Lance has arguably looked maybe even a little bit quicker. But it's good to see the Aston Martin actually somewhat competitive, because I feel like... And it's also nice seeing, because especially at the start of the year, that car seemed really slowed down, right down there with the Williams. But now it feels like they're consistently close. And I'd actually maybe argue that that's a quicker package right now than the AlphaTauri in the Aston Martin. I think at this point of the season, and we saw the Alfa Romeo really strong at the start of the season, I think that's kind of fallen. But do you have an opinion on that, Aldas? I
was just going to say, it's going to be very fun next year if that car is still like at the back of the grid. And then me and Hayden are just like,
no, we've got to believe, we've got to manifest
P12, mate,
Aldas,
he smashed
okay?
it.
Yeah, but
it's going to be
have a big
point
factory.
Scorer. Yeah, well, not yet. I don't know when that's going to be built and finished. But I want to add on the Vettel
January.
thing. I want to add on the Vettel thing, because the perfect commentary could have happened when it was Lewis fighting Perez, and then all of a sudden, but here comes Sebastian Vettel, and then he's just blocking them as they go around the track. Oh, it was beautiful.
Yeah. That was
I might edit that. I might dub that over, actually. I might do that.
yeah, go on. That's a good shout. That's some good content. No, I agree. I think that, that was more on the team, because you've only got so much space to see with the rear view mirrors. Although, talking rear view mirrors, what did you make of the big chunky new ones, boys? Aldas, what did you think?
I liked it. I thought they were cool. Yeah, I thought it actually looked like... It didn't look abnormal. Like, I got used to them straight away. It looked a bit weird on Max Verstappen's car, where like he was running the small one, like the one that we use now on the right, and then the wham one on the left. But I actually quite like them. I think it's better for the drivers. Again, Lewis actually said, like, I think it was after Spa, like one of the reasons why he crashed into Alonso is that he just couldn't see. Like it's so difficult to know where everyone is. So I think bigger mirrors, I quite like it. I thought they look cool, chunky. I like it.
Do you like them, Hayden?
I'm
like
gonna
chunky
lie,
as well.
right? I didn't even know we had
yeah.
new wing mirrors.
Oh,
I had the
highlight mode.
The
Highlight
highlights
mode
merchant
back again.
I was like, what on earth are you on about? New mirrors.
it was only practice.
Usually I
It
don't
was
show
only
up
practice.
to watching F1 till Sunday because Lance Stroll doesn't show up as well till Sunday. But you know,
fair enough.
It was only on the Friday, so I'll let you off this
appreciate
time.
yeah, I just didn't notice. I didn't even hear it talked about. In all fairness,
Right, let's talk about Alfa Romeo. Alfa Romeo seemed to have kind of fallen off towards the end of the season. I mean, I can't remember who was ahead when Bottas pulled up. Was it
No
Joe?
clue.
I think Joe. No,
They had
I think
such a
no
anonymous
idea.
race.
I think Joe was, I believe. I think who outqualified who? Let me just have a little look. Joe outqualified Bottas.
I think
So I think Joe was ahead when it came out, I believe.
Either way,
It's so
it was
weird
it was
with
pretty
Alpha. They have
close.
these like it's just such a they've fallen off so much that it's hard to even like keep up with what they're doing because like last time out, Zhou was stuck in the train, then Valtteri got had to avoid a spinning Latifi classic, and then again he breaks down even today. So even in the race yesterday, so it's just like the
three
car is falling
DNS
off.
in the last 3 races.
Yeah,
It's
for
just
Bottas.
I don't know what's going on, and I mentioned it actually. The problem is as the cars got worse, like for this in terms of Zhou, like as the cars got worse, Zhou has got better, but you don't notice it because the car's like falling off. So it's just
He out-qualified Valtteri this weekend as well.
Yeah,
Joe
and
is the
looking at the
same
beginning of the
situation
season,
right
like-
now as Stroll has been for the last part of the season, where you have these really good performances, but they're not seen because when your teammate had good performances, he was scoring good points. But when you're getting good performances, the car's not as good anymore. So now you're scraping a P11 or something like that, which is a shame to see because I think, in all fairness, the hype for Bottas has definitely dropped down because Joe out-qualified him again. And he outraced him again. So it's good to see from Joe that hopefully, I back my boy. I hope that he's going to get a seat again for next season. And I just hope that Alfa Romeo can maybe develop that car. But my worry is obviously with the money coming out from Alfa Romeo, they're pulling out. They're going to have to wait a few years for the Audi to come in, that they're going to be a team that's going to be struggling at the back for a while.
Yeah, I think Joe's done enough to kind of put himself in a good position. Again, I do want, I think the standard from the rookies last year wasn't the best. I mean, we've had some rookie seasons where, like Charles Leclerc's come in and just kind of wiped the floor with his teammate. But then, should that be expected? I think Joe's done a good job. I think all in all, and it was a shame we couldn't see once again. We couldn't really see it because that car performance it's a bit concerning. I mean, do you know if they've got any more upgrades planned, Hayden? As Joe told you, your best is. So,
ask him in the lobby.
We don't particularly talk about the development of the car and what's going on
talk
back
about
in
work.
the factory. No, I don't be like. So what's the design process behind your front wings? No, that usually doesn't strike us. But I'm not sure with Alfa Romeo. Obviously, they made a really decent car at the start of the season, similar to Haas. But just kind of like dropped off the base. I'm hoping it's still that yo-yo situation, that this track just didn't suit them and they're going to go to another track that's going to suit them a bit more. That's just more hope, whether it's not really backed up by any factual knowledge, which most of the time with me, to be honest, not backed up with any factual knowledge. But yeah, I think Joe's definitely done enough to deserve a seat. And I mean, you look at the head-to-heads more in terms of qualifying and racing, and you put it out in your tweets, Tomo. I don't know how close it is between Zhou and Bottas, but I'm pretty sure it's quite close.
Like, I think
Always
it's
put on the
about
spot.
10-5, I think. Something like that. Hang on, let me check.
So he's catching up.
We'll talk about AlphaTauri next. Obviously, Tsunoda out qualifying Gasly, which is great for Yuki. The race ends early.
Mm-hmm.
He was running ahead of Pierre as well, so I don't really know. Because obviously Yuki's race ended early. Do you two have a strong opinion either way? Because I don't really.
I think you can go either way on it. I think I would go for Tsunoda because he out-qualified him. It's very close between the two of them in the Q2 times, less than a tenth in it between the two of them, but he did get into Q2. Q3. Don't know what happened in Q3 for him, though, whether he just had the one lap and I think maybe got held up by Sergio Perez's crash, and that's why he only set a 1:12.5 and was 1.1 seconds off the pace
Fixed
of
again.
Mick. So it
Unbelievable.
must have been Perez. conspiracy theories out that AlphaTauri helping out Red Bull here, but it doesn't work the other way. They're going to need to strike themselves a better deal here because what is going on? But
it's a one-way relationship.
In the race, he was, I think, just on the cusp of the points for most of it, and then obviously the issue happened. So
they were like 11 and 12. I think they were kind of running around there. But I'd probably say Tsunoda as well. What do you think, Aldas?
Yeah, I'm going to go Yuki as well. I feel like there was some good speed in there, and again, it's just kind of okay for AlphaTauri. Like they're just at the clutches of the points. Like sometimes they can get 1 or 2. Sometimes Gasly has a great result. With Yuki though, it is getting a bit worrying though because he hasn't scored points in a long time. Like I know he's had a lot of reliability issues and that's been completely on AlphaTauri, but I want to see some point. I mean, I'm a Yuki Tsunoda fan and I'm just getting worried right now because like all of this talk of like Colton Herta this and like Liam Lawson that, like it's just I want to see Yuki like step it up, but the car's just not there, which is just really frustrating. But yeah, that's my Yuki rant over. I'm gonna give it to him though for this race, but score some points.
Yeah, he's only had 3 point scoring finishes, which is 2 fewer than Lance.
Not good.
It says, but then Pierre's only had 4 point scoring finishes, which is 1 lower than Lance. So there's stories to be told there.
Lance goated, that's what we've decided.
Clearly, that's the only reasonable
all we can say
learning to come out of that. Right, Haas.
Mick Schumacher. Mick definitely for this one.
Yeah. For the head-to-head, definitely. But
he got held up by a big stop, by the way. Mick Schumacher had a really long stop, so
that's true.
The team let him down. He qualified really well. Like I think it was 8. Was it 8th that he qualified? I think he qualified something like that.
Yeah, beat Yuki and Stroll had his problems. So
exactly, there you go. So mid Schumacher is clawing it back, but yeah, it's just like again. Actually, Hayden talked about it. Just when like you need performance, like you're fighting for that Alpine seat. And, the team let you down. It's kind of like, it's not coming. Something is not coming together for Mick Schumacher in the races. And as far as K-Mag, obviously had that earlier collision with the barrier, but just managed to save it. But, going from last, I think he was only racing Latifi at one point. So, can't really say much about that.
Was anyone racing Latifi?
Well, Magnussen did kind of do a lazy send up the inside, which then Latifi just cut back on him for.
That was jokes, by the way. I was like, how'd you get really overtaken by Latifi?
No, because it was like, Schumacher, with the long pit stop, it's P13, he got Seb on the last lap as well to move up from P14. So, I think ultimately, K-Mag's set... Oh, did he?
Seb and Zhou both got penalties. Zhou had one come in for... something during the pit stop. Vettel had one for ignoring blue flags.
Okay. So was that the Hamilton?
Checo. Yeah.
So they actually got punished for that. I couldn't remember. But yeah, Haas obviously Magnussen cocking up as well. He was like too wide with Albon, I think, and just kind of carried too much speed. That could have been his race over. He was a lucky boy there. So
could have been Albon's race over. Well.
Yeah, that would have not have gone down well.
Yeah.
Fuming. What do you think, Hayden? Mick?
Yeah, Mick as well. I mean, Magnussen out in P18, Mick up into Q3, so really good qualifying for him. And screwed over in the race due to a pit stop problem, which could have seen him maybe, have a chance of being close to that point scoring position as well. I feel like
it away from Lance.
Could have been P11. I think he would have more likely, because Lance had the better pace over the weekend. So I think Mick was probably going to be just about P11, which would be unfortunate. But in terms of the free drives that I've spoken about, the ones that really need to make themselves look as good as possibly can, this weekend, Mick Schumacher looked like the better one out of the 3 of them, which is good for him. So talking about that Alpine seat, or there's even talks, rumours of him being picked up by Red Bull and AlphaTauri, because obviously he's leaving the Ferrari Driver Academy, that there's talks that maybe AlphaTauri might pick him up and put him alongside Yuki Tsunoda if Gasly were to get that Alpine seat. So he did a better job this weekend out of those 3 drives, and of course did a better job over Magnussen and made Magnussen look a bit silly this weekend. If it wasn't for the problem in the pit stop, he would have made him look a lot worse, but they finished closer together due to that pit stop problem. Yeah,
it's not the first time I think K-Mag has over-sent it at the start of a race, and it's bit him on the arse. So yeah, not ideal. And then one final team to talk about is, of course, Williams. And obviously Q2 Albon, which I was surprised about, given the track characteristics and where that Williams seems to be quick. It's quick last weekend. Hopefully it'll be quick in Monza. But I was surprised he got to Q2, so great. Only P15 in the end, though. And, I mean, Well, I'm looking here still from the race, lap 37 to 72, and Latifi's 10 seconds off the back of K-Mag, whereas Albon's up in P13. So, P12 is I think a really strong, given everything, I think that was a really, really good drive from Alex. And once again, he's an absolute country mile clear, Aldas, of his teammate.
What was it in qualifying? Like over I think it was like a second, wasn't it? In Q1?
Yeah, 1 point...
In Q1. Oh my god.
1.7?
He must have got held
1.2.
up, surely.
1.2.
I know it was definitely a second because someone I remember because again I didn't watch qualifying, but someone tweeted about it. Like they screenshotted the gap and it was unbelievable.
God, yeah, it was,
but
wasn't it?
it was, yeah. I mean, what do you want me to say about Latifi? Like we've spoken, he should be out. I don't know what Jos Capito is like. I don't know what he's thinking, even saying stuff like, yeah, we might keep him actually. You should be putting pressure on him to see if he actually wants to like really like perform, but he's just not good enough to be honest, and that's the bottom line. In terms of Albon, actually, yeah, really good race because even he said that he was surprised how good the car actually felt. Because on higher downforce tracks, that Williams doesn't have a lot of a good downforce. But I'm very, very excited to see what he's going to be able to do at Monza because it was the quickest car in a straight line at Spa. So they're going to forget about the rear wing. They're going to just chop it off completely and just go wingless in Monza. So I'm looking forward to seeing. I think
zero wings.
Exactly, 0 wings. Like I'm looking forward to seeing what Albon can do in Monza. I think potentially points could be on the table if he nails the race and Williams nailed the strategy as well. So yeah, it's got to be Albon for this one. He's doing great. And yeah, looking forward to Monza.
Rocket ship Albono. Is Albon as good as George Russell and Lewis Hamilton? Because he's also smashed Nicholas Latifi. If Latifi is the benchmark, right? Then clearly Albon is...
Even I'm not that deluded,
is
Hayden.
The 7-time world champion potential. Yeah, I still buy the fact of Jos Capito being like, oh yeah, maybe we can keep him on because you want to keep his morale. If it's going to be his last season, you want him to go happy at the end of the day. You don't want to keep on going, yeah, he's shit, mate. Why have we got him? He's out next season. Don't worry, you won't be seeing Latifi again. No one's going to want to hear that. And he might just be like, do you know what? I'll take my money back with me. Enjoy the rest of your season. So they're like,
that Lavazza bag.
Keep paying the money and now off you go at the end of the season. See you later. But yeah, Albon clear. I mean, it is good to see the Williams fighting in the mid-pack with Albon, and also good to see Albon show himself in a really good light this season because obviously he was hard done by being put to the side. I don't think he really necessarily did anything too wrong in his Red Bull days. It was just unfortunate that you are compared up against Max Verstappen, and to be on that level you have to be an elite, and Albon, well, maybe he's shown it now. I don't know. He's beaten Latifi by 1.2 seconds. So I don't think George Russell could ever do that.
Sounds pretty elite to me.
Yeah, sounds very George Russell to me. So if you think George Russell's the GOAT, Aldas, then you should also think that Alex Albon.
Oh, I've been lawyered. Yeah. How did that happen?
It's very easy.
It is mad how far off the back Latifi is because this is the man who finished second in F2.
Yeah,
yes, it was in his
Nick
third
DeVries
season,
beat
but
him. He's an FE.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but
as a De Vries fan, I can tell you that De Vries, even now as a 26, 27-year-old, is still very sketchy. Like, he might be a Formula E champion, but he's so inconsistent. And I like De Vries. Like, I actually support him, but
it's all well and good having
Latifi could never, mate. Latifi could never.
You can be inconsistent, right? You can be inconsistent. We saw Pastor Maldonado, prime example, right? On his day, his pace was unreal, but he would make so many mistakes during the race. He'd had so many incidents that he'd become a meme. It's like Latifi has
but Latifi
never
doesn't have the pace, that core pace.
Unless the conditions are changeable, we've never seen the pace in normal conditions. Like maybe once or twice where he's got close, but even then, it's when there was a time when Albon matched Verstappen's qualifying at Suzuka in 2019 in the Red Bull, but that was only because Max didn't hook up a top quality lap, which he's human. I just think that I've just been really surprised by the lack of development from Latifi. I'll be honest, it's his third season.
Last year, his best ever race, in my opinion, was not Hungary 2021, where everyone crashed out when he drove down the inside. It was Monza 2021. I think he genuinely outqualified George Russell, had a really good race, and then got unlucky, I think, with a safety car or something. But so I'm actually looking forward to seeing, him coming back where the car hopefully will be a little bit stronger. I want to see what he can do at Monza. That was his best, race, in my opinion, ever in Formula One last year. Mm-hmm. So let's see what he can do.
The track's
on the
Monza's
shoulders.
not too hard because it's just straight line speed. So all you have to do is keep your foot down on the right pedal and you're sorted. So
Don't tell Daniel Ricciardo fans that.
Yeah.
Good thing Matt's not here. But yeah, it's frustrating, but I think it's time to go for Nicholas, I'm afraid. And I do wonder as well, how is the Williams really that far off the back? Because it's very hard to judge Alex's performance because Nick is always back there, but actually he is getting in the midfield. He is getting fairly consistent P11, 12, 13 kind of places. Yep. Is the Williams really that bad of a car, do you think, Hayden?
It outqualified a McLaren of Ricciardo. It outqualified a Haas. It outqualified an Aston.
Not hard to do.
It also was only 1/10 off of Zhou's Q2 time. And Albon was actually quicker than Zhou in Q1. Was not far off of Alonso's Q1 and Q2 time. So I wouldn't say it's that far off the pace at all because Alonso was 11.6 and Albon was 11.6 in Q1. So yeah, I wouldn't say it's that far off the back. I think Latifi, I don't know, maybe Latifi makes it look worse, Alex makes it look better, maybe Alex is outperforming that car. We'd have to see when another driver comes in. It's a tough benchmark to have when Latifi is so far off the pace. But yeah, at the moment, for me personally, I don't think the Williams is off the back. I think it's one of the back cars, but it can get in that fight.
It's not like a Haas. It's not like a 2021 Haas, is it? But
no.
All right, in a word, boys, before we wrap, who's in that Williams seat next year, Aldas? Go.
I am going to go with Logan Sargent. That's 2 words I know. Sargent.
Yes, sir. Hayden?
Ricciardo.
I'd love to see that. I'm going to say Sargent as well. Because I think he'll get minimum P5.
Just copy my answer, mate. Unbelievable.
Yeah,
nice originality, mate.
Right, thank you everyone for watching on YouTube. Like, subscribe. Reminded you at the start, you better have done it already. If you haven't, then Hayden's going to come for you. Look at how fierce he looks. And then everyone who's listening audio only who can't see how angry Officer Gullis was.
You can hear
it. Drop a like, rate 5 stars, do all that good stuff, and we will see you next Monday for the Italian Grand Prix at Monza. Goodbye, everyone. Ciao.
Bye.
Grazie.
Ragazzi.